Chuck. So I'm supposed to do an interview with you.
Oh, okay.
So actually, I want to talk about your educational experience. Right? You've been an educator for what, 30, 40 years, right? So I know at the time I started education, they didn't have jazz. The only thing they had jazz was in Berkeley or North Texas, right?
Yeah.
So when you went to Manhattan School Music, did they have a jazz program?
Not at all.
It was just classical music.
No, there was nothing like that on that level of education, and what happened was that more and more people got interested in Broadway shows, and they saw that the variety of music that they used, that they had to include not just classical music, but jazz, improvised music, music from South Hillbillies, all kinds of things. So they kind of opened it up for everybody to be able to have access.
Whether from jazz or classical, right?
Yeah.
But was there a jazz curriculum?
No, it was all strictly
classical,
symphony music.
Symphony music.
Yeah. And it was funny, I didn't realize I had done, I don't know how many Broadway shows, maybe it was around 30 before I realized that the whole Broadway show was invented by people of color, and introduced to the whole country, and the world.
Okay, jumping ahead, now they have that, now you get a degree, master's degree in jazz, jazz performance. Even the Manhattan School of Music where you graduate, right?
Yeah.
So you get a master's degree there, you get a master's degree in New School, Juilliard, right? So as an educator, what do you think about that? Because what's happening now, there's a network in academia and jazz, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for example, you got New School, really famous players come out to New School, but there's a network, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about that, the state of jazz in academia now?
Well, I was amazed. I was probably well into my 40s before I found out that whole element of music had been invented by musicians of color. The Broadway show itself, and these were things that when I was coming up, we always thought that you had to know all kinds of symphonic literature and music to get elevated to that level of performance, And what I didn't realize is that had been built on people of my father's generation and before that, who were doing everything by improvisation as well as by instrumental, written music.
So your generation, right? So every generation is different, right?
Yes.
But what I'm seeing in academia, right, where you got the jazz program with Juilliard, I'm from Detroit, you got Michigan State, University of Michigan, you get a degree in jazz performance, right? But what I'm seeing, these kids, they're, for example, to go to Juilliard or go to University of Michigan, you're in debt for 6 figures, and you got a degree in jazz.
Yeah.
Right? So I just want to know what you think about that.
Well, I thought it was ridiculous even at that time, But see, the thing was that I came from a family of musicians. My mother played the harp, which is not necessarily a jazz instrument, but being around the people that she was around, she learned how to improvise and can improvise even on this big harp, with this big, beautiful figure. And my father was a saxophone player. And what was even more interesting to me than that was that he fixed the saxophones of all the important saxophone players that were circulating in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. You know, everybody talks about how famous Charlie Parker is, Charles Christopher Parker, Yardbird Parker, Charlie Bird Parker. And they never even knew that the bird came from the fact that he was traveling with all these musicians, and they'd go through a farm country and run over a bird. They'd jump out, and he would collect that bird and take it to the next place where they could, you know, serve it up as food, you know. And these were the kinds of things that were a matter of survival. You know, they weren't making the kind of money that would allow them to, you know.
So there was improvisation on all levels.
Oh, on all levels, absolutely. There's an improvisation on survival.
On all levels.
That's what's really happening.
So we go back to academia. So you went to school in Manhattan School of Music, right?
Yeah.
Of course, you had to have good reading skills, right? Mm-hmm. Sight reading, right? So did you learn improvisation in the academia situation?
Not at all. No. I was fortunate enough to be in a musical family, and I learned all my improvisation from watching them constantly. Yeah. You know, my father would have musicians come through Chicago and visit our house so that he could repair their horns. Mm-hmm. You know, and I got to see all these famous musicians that I didn't realize how important they were at that time. You know, as a child, you don't realize that.
But you know, when I'm saying, but these young people, they don't have that opportunity now, right? So all the learning is the skills, the learning skills is in academia, right? Well, you learn it from so-called the street or your family, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing in academia, there's a sameness, right? There's and especially in terms of improvisation, right? There's a sort of sameness, right? And this is not a good or bad thing. I just want to know, do you agree with it? For example, somebody could teach you, you know, you have Jamie Ebersol, you got all this stuff, which is totally valid. Any knowledge you get, I'm okay, right? But then there's a thing I find a lot of the younger musicians, I can hear this here is lacking. Do you think that also?
Well, absolutely. You have to learn how to improvise.
But that's come from here. This is
well, it comes from being around people who are doing these things, and they make you wonder how did they do that? You know.
But isn't that hearing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's hearing, but it's also an informative knowledge that you have to acquire, because there are so many areas of, well, that's out of style now, but this is in style. And then, you know, and then you have to learn all these different steps and elements constantly. That the improvisation, I guess, is that everything is constantly changing and developing.
But okay, so when I still, as you've been educated for years, I'm having not doubts, but how these musicians are coming out of academia and how the music is sort of like it's academia. It's academic, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So which is good. You learn. So we go through. We play scales. We do. We play classical, right? But what's happening? It seems like the technique is more important now than others. I mean, this is what I'm observing, and I want to know: what is your observation about it?
That's a very
I know it is.
Thing, because the art of improvisation is from being unique in the sense that I've never heard anybody do that before, and that comes from an individual's development. You walk down the street and you hear insect over there and a frog over here and all kinds of different things. And you say, I wonder if I could sing like that. I wonder if I could create that on an instrument, you know. And even, you know, the form of our, what they call the embouchure, the way that we blow an instrument or, you know, through an instrument, each one of us has a different personal physical makeup. And that requires that some people can be identified simply because of the sound that they had when they played those particular instruments. And it wasn't just instruments that you blew on also. There were also instruments, the way you struck a certain drum or so many other things that you had to strike in order to play. Everybody has a different muscular, you know, sensitivity, and they also have a way of touching. Each one of us is different, you know.
Okay, something personal. I've been playing with you off and on 30, 40 years, right? And something I noticed that you have a really good memory about playing music, right? You like something you haven't played for years, instantaneously, you're like, oh, what key is that, right? So I want to know how you do that. Don't say it because I grew up in a music family. You know that already.
But I mean, it might be an attitude. You know, everybody is attracted by certain sounds. You know, and there are sounds that I find that are irritating. You know, like the overtone brass of a you know, the horn behind you trying to get out of your way. All these different things are obviously designed to make you move in a certain way or to influence you in a certain way. And I also have ways that I guess we all do. You know, there's love songs, there's hate songs, there's songs that make you want to do more than you've done within a certain area. You know,
is that why your memory is so good?
I would say the activity of that.
For example, like I said, we've been playing together a few years, and I'm really intrigued by you haven't played a song in many years, and you say what key, and you can play it in your key. I'm still intrigued by that.
Well, yeah.
Without any, I mean, in terms of is that some type of innate ability or talent, or that's something that you learn?
I would say it's a matter of being aware of having heard music all my life. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
You know, people were wandering in and out of my house, and they were playing all kinds of different types of music, not all of it that I liked, you know, but a lot of it was extremely different from what I've heard before. And I say, I wonder how I could recreate that myself, or how I could imitate the noise of that particular animal, or you know,
memory through osmosis.
Yeah, I mean, I mimic the sounds that I enjoy.
Okay. Yeah. For someone that doesn't have that background that you have, and you talk about how can we develop that memory muscle?
I would say, first of all, you've got to develop an interest.
Yeah.
You know, in what it is. You know, I would walk down the street, even when I was going to grade school, and every now and then I'd look it over and go, what's he singing about? You know, or what, you know, and they thought that I was kind of crazy, which I was. I'll admit to it. But I would hear things that would remind me or institute a melodic tone in my mind by the way it moved.
Yeah.
You know, you hear a crow say, you know, and you say, wow, I wonder if I could take a horn and say, "Pa-pa-pa," you know, and a lot of music was developed simply by hearing the humanity of other people's noise. You know, or animals that you were not familiar with. You know, you're out in the ocean somewhere and this big whale or something comes up and lets out this roar out of the bottom of the ocean, and that will scare you enough that you'll remember that for life. And you'll try to imitate it in various ways that you might have, you know, or that you might decide to develop.
Okay, one more thing. Did we practice, right? Practice as a musician. Did you practice every day?
Oh man, yes. I drove everybody crazy, especially when I started getting interested in the drums, you know, because all through grade school, all through high school, and all through college, I was a deterrence to other people's thoughts sometimes, because they'd hear this boom or bang or something that they were not trying to concentrate on, and that would draw their attention away from what they were thinking.
Okay, yeah.
I guess that's one way to say it.
There's many ways to say it. Okay, thank you, Warren.